Tara, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Merci d'être venu à Montréal.
Merci.
C'est un grand plaisir de t'avoir dans notre centre. Et donc, puis aussi, merci d'avoir accepté de participer à cet exercice difficile qui est l'entrevue Explore ton centre que nous produisons depuis plus de 2 ans. Donc, c'est un grand honneur, surtout un plaisir. Parce
Pour
qu'on s'est
moi
déjà
aussi.
parlé par Zoom et autres, mais jamais en direct. Euh, Ce qui est aussi intéressant, ça va être le problème de la langue.
Mhm.
Je sais que tu parles français, mieux que moi je parle l'anglais, mais c'est pas ta langue naturelle.
Mhm.
Comme moi, j'ai aussi des grandes difficultés en anglais. Donc, l'idée, c'est de faire, pour que personne ne soit désavantagé, de faire l'entrevue en bilingue.
Mhm.
Donc, je vais continuer à parler en français, de temps en temps en anglais si ça me vient. Et puis, je te propose de faire l'inverse, c'est-à-dire de parler en anglais et puis en français quand ça convient ou si je comprends pas,
Mhm. Mhm.
je t'arrêterai à ce moment-là. Et puis, donc, pour les personnes qui nous écoutent, ça veut dire que pour les personnes qui ne sont pas bilingues, d'utiliser l'auto-traduction de YouTube, qui est le petit logo en forme de... Non, c'était le double C, pas. Vous cliquez là-dessus et puis vous aurez les sous-titres avec possibilité de les avoir dans votre langue. C'est traduit des fois de façon approximative, mais c'est mieux que rien. Et de toute façon, vous avez le son original en même temps. Voilà. Donc, je vais te laisser te présenter, donc en anglais ou en français, comme tu veux, autant personnellement que par rapport à Shambhala. Et puis après, bon, on verra comment on progresse sur cette entrevue, puisque c'est très simple en fait.
Mhm. Mhm.
Ça se veut sans cérémonie et puis chacun parle de soi et de son expérience par rapport à Shambhala bien sûr, mais peut-être d'autres expériences personnelles. Enfin, on rentre pas dans les affaires personnelles, mais d'autres expériences au niveau du cheminement personnel initiatique ou spirituel. Merci.
Yeah, merci beaucoup. It's a huge pleasure for me to be here finally in Montreal and see your beautiful center and start to meet some of the community members and people who have been creating programs and bringing this whole situation to life. So thank you for your warm welcome. Um, yeah, so my name is Tara Templin. I hold the role of co-executive director for Shambhala Global. And I also am very much part of the Shambhala Ottawa community, so your neighbors here. And what can I say? I'm so pleased to finally make it here to the center and answer any questions. I've been working for the global organization now for 5.5 years. I began just at the beginning of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 2019 or 20? Oh dear, now I forget. But around that time, and it's been a journey as a lot of communities have been through, and happy to talk about where we are now as a global organization and what we're looking at. And personally, I'm what you would consider to be a newbie in Shambhala. I started to be involved, I think, for the first time around 2007, 2008, and didn't really start to be involved in the Ottawa community until 2017. And then somehow fate whisked me into the global organization very soon after I became more involved. So
Suddenly.
it was pretty sudden like that. Yeah. In our community, we went. Many of us participated in the Presencing Institute's ULab. I know you did as well. And through that whole process, I was more and more compelled to be involved with Shambhala. And I have a background in nonprofit management. Mm-hmm. And I thought at that time I could be of help or support. And I frankly was really impressed with the way that such a difficult time in our community was being navigated by leadership. So I was magnetized to the situation in a very interesting way.
Et on va essayer d'être chronologique. Comment tu es arrivé à Shambhala? Mm-hmm. Parce que sans rentrer dans des choses personnelles, juste un cheminement, qu'est-ce qui t'a aspiré dans Shambhala au départ, bien avant tout ça?
Well, I think it's a similar story as what I've heard from many people who I was living in Central America and South America for about 5 years. And I was in a situation such that the pace of life was slow enough that I could actually sit down. And so I began meditating myself in 2005 or so, and I needed support. I couldn't just sit and meditate by myself with no instruction, with no community, with no teachings. And so I started to look around and really seek out a place that I could meditate and learn. And I ended up moving to Ottawa with my husband, who's Canadian. I'm originally from Southern Illinois. And I wandered into the Ottawa Shambhala Center and met wonderful people and really felt supported in my practice and began to learn and learn more and sit and learn and sit and learn. And kept coming back.
Et donc, à travers ce cheminement personnel, il y a quand même eu tout un cheminement aussi vers des responsabilités plus importantes. Quelle relation tu fais entre le fait d'avoir une pratique personnelle et puis une pratique professionnelle au même endroit finalement? Mm-hmm. Quelles difficultés il y a dans cette gestion des deux aspects qu'on rencontre aussi dans une direction de centre?
You know, it's a really interesting question because I found that where I was in my own personal practice, which was pretty new, what I found was where our community and where our organization was at the time that I began taking on more responsibility in the global organization was sort of mirroring that newness, that sort of fresh start, that sort of sense of starting from the beginning. And so it's been wonderful, actually, how my own personal practice has been supported at about the same pace that our practice and education stream has redeveloped. So, for example, I was able to attend the first warrior assembly that we had as a community after our big change, after Sakyong Mipham Rinpoche stepped down from being the head of Shambhala. And so my practice has been an exploration, and I've felt like I've been able to move forward at about the same time as the organization has been clarifying what paths are available to people, both in the Shambhala teachings, and now focus at the global level has moved to trying to clarify and update our Buddhist curriculums. Mm-hmm. You know, and I've continued to experience Shambhala in general as a buffet of Dharma. You know, there's really just so many wonders to discover in art, in flower arranging, in archery. I mean, you name it. And then all of our teachings, which are coming from the braided lineage of Shambhala and the Kagyu and the Nyingma and it's been a huge learning process for me, a discovery process. And I think what I hear from people when I talk to them is that they're also discovering, again, sometimes it might feel like the first time, but people who've been on this path for decades are rediscovering certain teachings, certain core teachings. So it's been a lovely and very interesting and very challenging journey for me, both in my personal practice and then taking on more responsibilities for the global organization. And maybe I'll just say as well, I've always had a professional focus on community development and supporting the development of nonprofit organizations. And so for me to be part of a Shambhala that is working very hard to be in tune with what our community wants and needs feels really important, feels in line with my own values and inspiration. And yours as well, from what I hear you connecting and putting the focus on the Montreal community and what people want here and understand.
Oui, c'est la base.
C'est la base.
C'est la base. La Sangha, c'est vraiment, c'est à la fois le milieu dans lequel on vit, donc c'est nourrissant sur tous les plans, et en même temps, c'est aussi un outil de pratique.
Oh oui, oh oui.
C'est un bel outil de pratique et j'ai bien aimé l'expression de buffet du Dharma, parce que c'est vrai qu'on ne peut pas tout pratiquer et que selon sa sensibilité, on peut être attiré plus par des études très approfondies, très intellectuelles ou même spirituelles, mais dans les textes et dans les chants et dans les transmissions. Ou on peut aussi pratiquer sur, comme ça se passe aujourd'hui dans notre centre, sur l'art dharma, avec tous ces développements, l'art Shambhala, et puis les arts comme la photographie contemplative, ou les kebanas, ou la cérémonie du thé.
C'est riche.
Tout est ouvert, tout est riche. Et puis, on peut aussi pratiquer, comme on fait tous les deux, en s'investissant dans la Sangha et en prenant des postes de responsabilité qui sont plus que des postes administratifs, des postes de pratique.
Oh oui.
Des pratiques personnelles. Mais en ce qui te concerne, tu es quand même passé à un autre niveau, parce que là, tu es au niveau de Shambhala global. Et là, on est plus dans quelque chose qui touche à la prospective de la lignée, et surtout dans ces temps de chaos, à la fois mondial et au niveau de notre propre lignée, de comment on s'adapte au monde moderne, en fait. Donc ça, j'aimerais que tu nous parles de ça, comment tu as vécu ce problème d'adaptation. Je ne parle pas du traumatisme de ce qui s'est passé, on va pas, c'est pas le lieu de parler de ça, mais comment on gère ça. Comment, au niveau de ta pratique personnelle, je parle de ton point de vue simplement, et comment tu as traversé ça, et puis comment parce qu'il est évident que tu t'es beaucoup investi là-dedans, et que tu apportes aussi beaucoup dans l'évolution de notre lignée. Et j'aimerais que tu nous parles de ça sans aller dans les choses qui pourraient te mettre en danger.
En problème.
Donc, de parler par rapport à une pratique personnelle, comment tu es entré là-dedans, et puis comment ça s'est modifié avec l'épreuve du terrain.
Yeah, such a rich exploration. It's very interesting. Maybe just to share some things that come up for me. So the Shambhala teachings are about leadership. And when we think about leadership, of course, we have to think about governance. And what I can share with you is that from the moment that I joined the global organization, I have been so inspired by the board members that, in 2019 stepped up into a completely groundless situation, and they stepped up as practitioners. And so what I was able to experience with them is the practice of governance. And I feel like I had the gift of a training with people that had been in our community, soaking in the teachings and applying the teachings for decades and decades of their lives. And I saw how they really took so much care in every single decision they made, knowing that because we were in such a groundless situation as a community, every step that they would take would have repercussions for the direction of our community, for the discovery of what does it mean to be a lineage like ours, where we don't have a lineage holder that is holding and guiding our community. And so what I saw there was, magnetizing, pacifying, destroying on the very odd occasion. And it was really inspiring to see how people made decisions. And if we, think about the energetics of the situation, their tremendous exertion in holding an open space for our community to figure out what we wanted to do. And that space is still being held open. So I think there's always a risk that in the panic of not knowing where we were going to go, to very quickly converge on a direction. And it takes tremendous exertion to keep possibilities open for as long as possible until there's some sense of direction that is emerging organically. And that is what I saw in, not every, of course, they're human beings, but that is what I saw in the leadership, and it was really inspiring to me.
Where did you find your inspiration for going on? L'inspiration pour aller, parce que comme tu le disais, ce qui nous manque, c'est ce qu'on appelle l'absence de là. Et comment tu as pu compenser cette difficulté qu'on rencontre dans tous les centres aussi, la même chose. Et on compense d'une manière ou d'une autre, et au niveau personnel pour toi et peut-être au niveau de Shambhala Global, quelle solution provisoire ou solution un peu adaptée permet d'aller plus en avant, au moins un temps, en attendant mieux.
Well, I would say I have taken continual inspiration from the very steeped and practiced teachers that we have. I've always had a sense of lineage from people in our community who are supporting practitioners and who are teaching and who are, innovating and creating new programs. And I think of our community as, it started with Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and it exploded out from there. And in that explosion is, a vast amount of real practitioners, real teachers who understand our lineage and who understand our community and understand what they're holding, as being very precious. We're the only community that holds the Shambhala teachings. Our purpose to support, to propagate the Shambhala teachings is entirely unique to us. And if we don't keep doing that, then it will disappear. And what I hear from teachers in our community is they understand that, and they feel a huge responsibility around that. In some cases, directly charged by Chogyam Trungpa to do that, to do particular, to focus on a particular stream of teachings in our lineage. And I see them doing that, and I have the privilege in my role to be in contact with a lot of people and see what they're doing and take inspiration from that. And I think, it's common to want the one person to guide and be the focal point, but I think we're in a situation where we have, probably 1,000 such focal points who are genuine lineage holders from Chogyam Trungpa who are guiding our community actively. And it's less visible unless you can kind of start to connect the dots, which I think we're doing as a community. But I think it makes us much stronger, actually. And I say what's also been interesting over the last probably year and a half is I've seen that there are several Tibetan lineage holders who have been part of our community in the past and who have cared deeply for the Shambhala community. And I see them reconnecting, and I see them teaching in our centers, and I see them speaking directly to Chogyam Trungpa's students and to the Shambhala community, encouraging us to move forward, encouraging us to practice and keep figuring out what this crazy thing is that we have inherited, and how to go forward with it, and that they want to be available to support us in that work. And I see from them confidence that we can actually do this and that we have everything that we need. So it helps to have teachers who understand our lineage also encouraging us and knowing that we can do this, even though it feels sometimes like we really are taking one step, we're placing one foot in front of the other. And really it's hard to see further forward.
Oui, à Montréal, nous avons des étudiants du Sakion qui sont restés au centre, mais nous avons aussi des étudiants qui suivent d'autres maîtres tibétains en ce moment, soit sur place, soit surtout en Népal. Et puis, il y a aussi des gens qui cherchent d'autres voies. Et puis, une autre chose qui se développe de plus en plus, c'est les contacts entre centres, entre lignées dans Montréal. Et ça, c'est très enrichissant aussi. Surtout pour moi qui suis au départ Kagyu, parce que j'ai commencé par cette ligne-là, je suis venu à Shambhala après. Donc c'est intéressant de faire des ponts entre les lignées, parce que toutes les lignées viennent de la même source, il n'y a qu'un Bouddha, enfin un Bouddha historique. Donc il n'y a pas de différence, il y a des différences extérieures, il y a des différences de culture, mais il n'y a pas de différence de l'essence des trois joyaux. Donc c'est le même moteur triphasé.
Yeah, and it's so wonderful in that the Shambhala teachings for some people are a gateway to the Buddhist teachings, and then some people find the Buddhist teachings are a gateway into the Shambhala teachings. And I personally find our community being really enriched by the new and refreshed connections with other Tibetan lineage holders. I think what we know how to do in our community is welcome and host and be, outrageously welcome. I think that is who we are in our core, inclusive and able to create a space that people can feel at home in. You know, it's not every lineage, it's not every you know, Buddhist community that you can go into and actually feel like you could carry your practices into that community and still be enriched in this new environment. So we have something very special in the actual environmental piece that we create and know how to create. Our forms are teachings. And I think it's easy to forget that when you walk, from the instant you walk into a Shambhala a Shambhala community, a Shambhala building, you're actually, it wakes you up, because it's such an uplifted space and experience, and people place a lot of importance on the actual environment and practice space. Not that they don't in other communities, but I think the way we do it is particularly welcoming.
Je pense que, enfin, moi, ça a été ce qui m'a fait venir à Shambhala, c'est la notion de société éveillée. Et parce que je suis quelqu'un qui travaille sur le terrain, donc la société, c'est le terrain. C'est le terrain de pratique, parce que c'est là où on est tous les jours. et, et c'est un terrain de pratique qui n'est pas facile d'ailleurs, mais justement, dans notre époque où la société évolue beaucoup, comment tu vois l'évolution de Shambhala par rapport à ça, par rapport à tous les challenges qui sont, tiens, j'emploie un mot anglais, qui sont face à nous dans la conduite de soit de nos centres, soit de la lignée, si on parle de Shambhala Global. Quels moyens on a de s'adapter? S'adapter, c'est-à-dire d'être dans l'évolution, mais sans perdre ce qui est le cœur de la lignée, c'est-à-dire les trois joyaux.
And just to clarify, are you talking about any particular societal challenges, or you're talking about, you know, general trends in society and how Shambhala is adapting to cultural shifts?
Cultural. Et on parlera un peu après des problèmes culturels, mais déjà en général.
Well, that's interesting and hard question to answer.
Si tu ne peux pas répondre, c'est pas un piège.
Well, I think, you know, I tend to be, maybe I oversimplify things, but I find the teaching of enlightened society and the mere notion that society could be enlightened as completely outrageous. And I think it's completely outrageous now, and I think it was completely outrageous 50 years ago when our community started. And that's why I love it. I mean, because it just the mere concept of it stops your mind. How could that be? How could it be? And it's, I don't, you know, so it's something that could only be realized in each moment. It's otherwise there's just no it's impossible. It's impossible. It has to be on the spot. So I think it doesn't, in some sense, and again, this is Tara's very simple mind on this. It doesn't matter the cultural overlays, the, you know, democracy versus sociocracy versus, you know, those structures will always be there, and they'll always be changing and shifting, and there will always be problems with what we're human beings, and what we're trying to create together is always going to have imperfections. And I feel like the notion that we could actually be content and not fight the imperfections is really wonderful.
Gros programme.
It is a gros programme,
Donc, en développant aussi sur le côté culturel, alors là, au point de vue fonction, dans Shambhala Global, il y a eu des difficultés par les années passées, puis c'est
Non,
de la
difficulté, non, de quoi tu parles?
et ça n'a pas été des conflits. Hein. Je ne parle pas de
Mhm,
conflits, mais je parle
mhm.
simplement de difficultés des fois au niveau de la transmission des enseignements selon les cultures, selon les langues, parce que il y a une tendance de tout le monde d'ailleurs, quelle que soit la langue, à penser que euh, on peut traduire des textes et que donc c'est ouvert à tout le monde.
Yeah.
Sauf que c'est pas comme ça que ça fonctionne et que la différence de langue, c'est aussi une différence de culture, une différence de façon de penser, puisque
Mhm,
c'est les mots qui structurent la pensée. Donc,
mhm, mhm.
la façon de traduire trahit l'origine. Donc, tous nos textes devraient être le Bouddha enseigné en pali, on devrait tous parler pali.
Mm, mhm,
Euh,
mhm, mhm. Yeah,
et donc c'est impossible,
yeah.
mais donc c'est un peu ça, que comment on peut travailler ensemble en ayant des façons de penser différentes parce que on a des langues différentes.
Mhm.
Alors
Yeah,
on
yeah,
y arrive, mais il y a des problèmes de frontières en fait. Les frontières sont floues,
yeah, yeah,
sont voilà. Juste parler de ça,
yeah,
sans dire qu'il y a des solutions, parce que
yeah.
à mon avis, je
Whoa.
pense pas qu'il y en ait.
Yeah. Well,
Mais comment on peut aborder ce problème-là?
yeah. I mean, I'm not an intellectual, and I'm
Mm.
not particularly academic. So I think you could definitely explore those themes on
Mm.
those levels and have a very rich conversation. From my perspective, one of the reasons I was drawn to this lineage is because it's a practice lineage, and um, that's the ground. The ground is openness. The ground is sitting. And I think that the core of Shambhala, the core of Buddhism, is beyond words. It's beyond concepts, and
Mm.
that being the foundation, I think anything is possible on top of it. And of course, we'll have all kinds of, you know, debates and conflicts and confusion, and we do have all of those things. But I also feel that the truth of Dharma means truth, so it cuts through those. It can cut through those confusions and complexities in a very interesting way, and I think good teachers have an ability to teach where language is only one aspect of their teaching. And so um, that helps enormously to overcome some of those linguistic and cultural boundaries. And I think that's one thing we really have going for us as a community, because we are working with teachings that are as true and profound as
Mm.
well, in my experience, as they come. So I think that makes everything possible, everything workable. And of course I could talk about the practical side of things, where our global organization has needed to contract in line with the size of our community and the energetic flow of money back and forth, and what we're able to support at the global level. We used to have a wonderful individual supporting translation and coordinating translators in 8 different languages, and that was a very active part of our community. And it's just now that we're starting to regain a little bit of footing in terms of having programs translated into Spanish and French and some German. And it was a huge loss to our community to not have an individual whose sole focus was trying to ensure that people had access to our teachings and to very good vetted translations. I mean, I've been in the files, the way down deep into the files, and what you see in that is every single liturgy, every single chant that we had classified into, beginning translation, vetted once translation, vetted twice translation, approved by teacher translation, and so on. And I think we as a community have a history of putting a huge amount of effort into ensuring that they are accurate and high quality, beyond high quality, but true to what is trying to be expressed in teaching. So to have those translations at that level, and that is still really important. And it's one of those things as we improve and rebound and start growing again as a community, we can look at how we can resource that area. But it's good that it's coming from the community itself. So it's not like, here's the individual and get to work, but rather, at a global level, but it's rather, where is the interest coming from? What countries, what communities, what sanghas in Spain, in South America, in Brazil, in Quebec, like what are the communities yearning for? And we'll start with that.
Oui, il y a des communautés qui s'investissent aussi dans la solution. Et puis, il y a des communautés qui demandent une solution. C'est pas pareil.
Yeah, exactement. Et je sais que Montréal fait beaucoup de ça. Vous appuyez beaucoup les traductions et les programmes qui doivent être offerts en français.
Historiquement, le Shambhala Montréal, déjà, Shogun Trungpa Rinpoche a mis les pieds. Ses premiers enseignements, c'était à Montréal, avant d'aller à la Codifique. Mais le Shambhala Montréal a une histoire de produire des traducteurs, Richard Gardel, etc. Enfin, je ne veux pas tous les citer parce que je vais en oublier.
Exactement. J'ai même la même liste dans ma tête.
Mais historiquement, dès le départ, les traductions françaises venaient de Montréal. Même celles qui étaient utilisées en France, elles venaient de Montréal. Donc c'est un problème qui... déjà, les Québécois, dans leur culture, avaient déjà cette notion de sauvegarder leur langue et leur culture.
Et ça facilité
c'est ça qui a facilité de produire des traducteurs. Avec des traductions de belle qualité, parce que ça, effectivement, comme tu le disais, des traductions qui ont toujours été vérifiées, qui ont toujours été...
vraiment haute qualité.
Donc, revenons au présent. Je sais que ce Shambhala Global Services actuellement est en train de mettre en place tout un système de constellation, etc., de connexion entre les... C'est une espèce de réseau, en fait, de connexion entre les communautés. Comment ça fonctionne actuellement? Je ne parle pas sur le comment c'est fabriqué, mais quels sont les premiers résultats? Parce que c'est un peu tôt pour donner des choses, parce que ça fait quelques années à peine. Donc c'est un peu tôt pour en tirer des conclusions définitives, mais comment ça se passe au point de vue résultat? En dehors de ce que nous, on voit à partir de notre petite fenêtre de Montréal.
It's very interesting to see. It's very interesting to see how our community can develop going forward, and the network of centers, and how centers are starting to organize regionally. I'll start by saying that the Global Community Council is a very important, brand new organizing body, organizing structure in our community. And when I say brand new, it's now a year and a half. And they're definitely, from my perspective, I think they're established and they're experimenting and they're setting up the ways they want to govern themselves, which is really important that there is ample time taken for how decisions are made within that body, and setting up regional constellations of centers, which is very interesting. And I know, Montreal and Quebec City, and I believe you're in a constellation with France, so that there can be fluid communication in French, which is really important. And there's similar constellations set up between Spain and Mexico and Latin America. And we're just now seeing some interesting collaborations, I think, at the grassroots level between centers that didn't have connection with each other. I think Montreal was probably unique in that you already had a lot of communication between the centers in France, Dechincholing and Quebec City. And I think for some of the other centers, there's been a sense of isolation. And, I think about the Pacific Northwest constellation, for example, which encompasses both centers in Canada and centers in the United States, like Portland and Seattle and Victoria, BC, and Vancouver, theoretically even Kamloops and the Kootenays. And, to think how teachers and community members and leaders could share information back and forth, and have that information and needs and issues and challenges that are identified in that particular region then go to the Shambhala board and inform the Shambhala board about what directions, what resources should be invested in the community, is really wonderful. And I think it's just starting. And I have a lot of hope that this new structure can be that mycelium. I like to use this analogy of underground mycelium in a forest, making all of these beautiful connections that strengthen our community and actually make it really resistant to whatever weather comes our way. And I think we're at the beginning of that. I think it's a challenging time. Our central organization and the legal structures that we have are typical nonprofit leadership, or nonprofit structures, legal structures in Canada and the United States. And so we're operating in a very ordinary sense, and an ordinary according to government and legal legislation. And I think it's very challenging to navigate being and maintaining our legal infrastructure, our organizational infrastructure, and knowing that we need community leadership and regional leadership and communication, and that needing to influence, because what we're running into is just the constraints of time. We have an all volunteer board, there's 7 of them now, and I think all of them have full-time jobs. And it is in many ways a normal nonprofit structure where we're even pretty modestly sized for that. And so when we think about in some ways, vastness of our community and the 50-year history of our community, connecting with a pretty small nonprofit, and that nonprofit needing to be responsive to this, array of needs and opinions and practice paths and all the rest of it. It's a complicated situation. And I think probably the only reason we're still able to continue navigating is because we're bringing some empathy for each other into this whole situation, and a lot of patience, and even more patience than you really want ever to have.
The key is the community is Sangha.
Our community probably should have, practically speaking, it's completely astonishing that our community is still in existence, and we didn't fly off into a million different directions. but we stayed together, and now we're really discovering what is the organizational structure that's going to work for decision making and connection. And just to give you an example, I have a friend that I'm the meditation instructor for, and I was talking to her about the Shambhala training path, and she said, "Okay, I'd love to take one of these Shambhala training retreats." And I said, "Okay, let's get on the website." And she said, where could I go? And I said, well, Montreal, you could go to Montreal, you could go to Toronto, Ottawa when we offer them, but it might be a while. And then she says, I'm going to be traveling, where could I go? And I look, and now our Shambhala training levels have different names. Mm-hmm. And so it's so confusing for someone just entering into our community to even know what is the Shambhala path? Mm-hmm. How do I tap into it? And I think that's something we need to be aware of as a community. How do we maintain some consistency so that people can understand who we are and what we're offering as part of our core path, and experiment at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Gros programme. Huge programme. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, on a fait un bon tour d'horizon.
Oui, c'est fait, en effet.
Est-ce que tu voudrais faire une synthèse?
Ouf, non.
Non, enfin, c'était pas le sens que je voulais donner. C'était une conclusion qui te... disons, quelles sont les choses importantes pour toi dont nous avons parlé ou dont nous n'avons pas parlé.
Mm-hmm. I think what I'd like to say is what Montreal is doing, what a lot of, what each center is doing right now is really important for the rest of our community. And I think it's sometimes easy to get lost in, the daily operations of your center and thinking about, what is the next program we're going to offer? Who needs this? Who needs that? How are we going to organize ourselves and feel good as a community? And I guess I would just say that particularly right now, everything that everybody else does, I mean, this is interdependence, this is our teaching, but we're learning from each other and we're taking inspiration from each other. And what you're doing in Montreal has a huge impact on the rest of our community, particularly because you're a center that has vibrancy and health and this lovely, lovely space and good leadership. And I think there are centers like Montreal, but in particular, you're a very special center in that you've navigated these conflicts and maintained a community that has the ability to be together even with very distinct practice paths. And I think there's a admiration and recognition in our community that Montreal is a special community to look at and have as part of our guides, sort of our pillar communities. And I think I just want to say that the learnings that you're having and what you're doing, it would be wonderful to hear more and more about it. And I think the more you talk about what you're doing with others, the better we all will be.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And that includes when it doesn't go well.
yeah, because it began before me during the 2018 and 2019 beginning. It was Carol Howard, and then after Suzanne Glenn and Massimo Guerra, and after me. Yeah. So there is a chain, and we follow the same path, in fact. Focused on Sangha, and Carol began with a talk circle, and it's the very center of what we do. Talk each other,
and care for each other,
take care of each other. Et quand j'ai donné les vœux pour le nouvel an, pour le Losar, le nouvel an tibétain, j'ai encore dit le point principal, c'est la Sangha.
Mhm. Mhm.
S'il n'y a pas de Sangha, il n'y a rien. Il n'y a pas de centre.
Yeah. It's the three jewels, and I think we haven't necessarily, a lot of us haven't focused on the Sangha as much as we could have. And so, yes, it's lovely what you're doing. It's lovely. Yeah. Yeah.
Last word?
No, thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Yes, it's
Thank
a
you.
pleasure. And
thank you
yeah.
to Léon.
Thank you.
Technicien en chef qui manipule tous ces engins électroniques avec un brio, une maestria sans égale. Merci Léon. Merci à vous qui nous regardez et thank you to everybody and see you next month.